the heavy RB strategy, the zero wide receiver strategy, the hero RB strategy, the zero RB strategy. Now I'm going to get into my favorite draft strategy for you guys to use. Hey guys, I'm John, and in this video, I am going to give you guys the best draft strategies for your fantasy football league in 2023. And not only that, but I'm going to even give you examples of who I would draft from different positions in the draft and why I would use those specific strategies at those positions in the draft. But you might be wondering, John, why should I listen to you? Well, actually, 2 years ago, I predicted Ja'Marr Chase to be Rookie of the Year before the season even started.
I love Ja'Marr Chase. I think he's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
And not only that, but last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown was taken about 20th overall, and I was telling people to draft him top 10 wide receiver because he was going to be a great player. The second player that's going to break out is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I have 190,000 followers and more on TikTok that all value my advice, and I guide people through the season to help them win their fantasy football championship, and I'm going to do the same for you starting right now. Now, I am going to get into a lot of the different draft strategies that you can use for your fantasy football drafts this season, and I like to say that your fantasy football draft is about 40% of your fantasy football team. It contributes to 40% of your success throughout this entire season, and I am here to coach you through that and right now give you the best strategies that you should use based on your draft position. So I'm going to start by going through the draft strategies, which you might have heard before, but I'll explain a little bit about what they are, and then I'll give you the best strategy, and then I'll give you some examples of what players I would pick exactly. So to start off of the draft strategies, the first one I'm going to go with is the heavy RB strategy, and this strategy is basically picking 3 or 4 running backs in your first 3 or 4 or 5 picks in your fantasy football draft. So you're drafting a lot of running backs early. And basically what this is doing is it's preventing you from being affected by running back injuries. We all know that running back is one of those positions in the NFL where a lot of players get hurt. And using the heavy RB strategy will make your team immune to RB injuries, because if you have 3 or 4 good running backs, then if one of the running backs gets hurt, you're not really affected by it because you'll still have 2 running back slots filled, and you could even use that 3rd running back in your flex. And if he gets hurt, you're good because you still have 2 starting running backs in your fantasy football lineup that are not hurt, and they're going to get you a lot of points. And not a lot of people like to worry about the running back position because it's so injury prone. Another one, which isn't so popular, is the zero wide receiver strategy. And this is drafting running backs, tight ends, and quarterbacks early in the draft. And not a lot of people use this strategy because of how important wide receivers are to your fantasy team. They score so many points. So you want to make sure you have a lot of wide receivers. Hint, hint. I'll tell you what my favorite strategy is in a little bit. The next one is the hero RB strategy. And this is where you grab a top tier running back, usually a top 10, maybe even a top 5 running back in your first 2 or 3 picks, so that you can have a great running back, but then you focus on wide receivers. And then your RB2 is one of your weakest positions on your team. The next one is the zero RB strategy, another really popular strategy because, like I said, people love drafting wide receivers because they score so many points. Now, with the zero RB strategy, you're banking on the fact that you're going to be able to get mid-tier running backs late in the draft, which is definitely possible. And for a draft like this year, I think that is possible. The next one is a balanced approach. This is getting a wide receiver, then a running back, then a quarterback, then a tight end. With your first 4 picks, you pick the 4 skill positions to have a more balanced team so that you don't lack in any one position. I like that strategy for certain picks. For some picks, I don't. The next one is the superstar QB strategy. This is a strategy where you might get Mahomes, you might get Josh Allen, you might get Jalen Hurts as your second pick. So what do you do then? Do you draft a wide receiver first in the beginning, or do you draft a running back? And then who do you get and what position with your 3rd round pick? That's very important. And then the other one is a superstar tight end strategy, which really is the Travis Kelce strategy. If you draft Travis Kelce in your first round, what should you be doing after you draft Travis Kelce in the first round? I'll get to that in a little bit. So that's a rundown of some of the most popular draft strategies that people are using in 2023. And now I'm going to get into my favorite draft strategy for you guys to use in your fantasy football drafts. And what I want to say is that the strategy that best suits you is going to be dependent on what pick you have in your draft. So my advice here, and based on what my favorite strategy is based on a 12-man PPR league. And for the players that I specifically state in these examples, I'm going to be using it based on a sleeper draft. So everybody knows the app Sleeper. A lot of people are using it nowadays. I'm going to go based off their current rankings and tell you guys who I would pick in those positions. So basically, a good rule of thumb, in my opinion, is to draft your second wide receiver before you draft your second running back. And what I mean by that is I want you to have great wide receivers, which lends you to thinking that I like the hero RB or the zero RB strategy. So those are my two favorite strategies because I like wide receivers. They score more points than running backs, but not only that, they don't get injured nearly as often as running backs, so I can have a more consistent team and a more reliable team throughout the entire season. So, okay, John, well, you said hero RB strategy. You also said zero RB. How do I use a combination of both? And what if I needed to use one or the other? Well, that's what I'm going to tell you right now. Now, a lot of people have the number one pick in their fantasy football draft, which is great. And a lot of people might not like that because they're like, okay, I get my first pick at anybody I want, but then I don't get a pick for like 23 picks after that. And then I do get 2 in a row, but I won't get top tier players. Well, I have the answer for you right now because if I had the number one pick in my fantasy football draft this year, my number one pick would be Justin Jefferson. But the draft strategy that I would use throughout the rest of the draft is a balanced draft strategy. And like I mentioned before, that's getting a skill position, one of the 4 skill positions, which each of the first 4 picks in my fantasy football draft. So if I went with Justin Jefferson first, my second pick would probably be one of those top tier quarterbacks, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts. That's the tier 1 of quarterbacks this year. So let's say I get Justin Jefferson. And then at pick 24, okay, maybe Mahomes and Allen are off the board. Let's just say I get Jalen Hurts, right? Then I have the number 25 pick, and I'm going to go with Najee Harris. Now I have a great wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. I have one of the top tier wide quarterbacks, and then I have one of the top tier running backs. Najee Harris is going to be a top 15 running back this year, so I'm pretty solidified there. Now with my next pick, I can get a guy like Amari Cooper in the 4th round, and then go with a guy like Dallas Goedert in the 5th round. Now look at my team. I've got Jalen Hurts. I've got 2 really good receivers. Amari Cooper has potential to get top 15 this year with Deshaun Watson back for a full season. I've got Justin Jefferson, the best player in fantasy football this year. I've got Dallas Goedert paired with Jalen Hurts. So look at that stack. You got Jalen Hurts, you got Dallas Goedert, you got 2 really good receivers, and then you got Najee Harris. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, John, you really don't have that many running backs. Like, when are you going to get running backs? Then I would get running backs. You can target guys like Rachaad White, Alexander Mattison. These are some mid-tier guys that are going to be available late in drafts. Those are 2 guys I like, and I'll mention them again later. But you have the stack of Jalen Hurts and Goddard. You have 2 solid wide receivers, and you have Najee Harris. And the one thing that I want to emphasize here is I am fine with my RB2 position being the weakest position in my starting lineup because I know that at some point in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, there's going to be some starting running backs that get hurt, and I could use the waiver wire and free agency to my advantage by picking up those running backs that are going to be able to fill in for those top tier running backs, and I could plug them in as my RB2. The main thing you want to do is make sure your top 2 wide receivers are 2 of the top 15 wide receivers that are going to end the year. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, John, what if I don't get the first pick in my fantasy draft? Like, obviously, everybody knows Justin Jefferson's the number 1 pick this year, but what if I don't get the first pick? Should I go with Austin Eckler? Or what about Christian McCaffrey? Well, what about Jamar Chase? Everybody's talking about a 3rd-year breakout from Jamar Chase. Well, this is what I would do if I had the number 2 pick in my fantasy football draft, and I would go with Austin Eckler. I think he's going to have a great year. He's coming into a contract year. He's going to be a free agent in 2024, and he negotiated incentives, $1.75 million in incentives with the Chargers this season, and he's going to get that if he hits 1,125 yards and 10 touchdowns. He has more incentive than anybody to play really well, and not only that, but Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator of this offense, and we saw what Tony Pollard did last season. I'm excited to see what Moore can do with Eckler this season, but then you're like, okay, John, well, if I got Eckler with the 2nd pick, what strategy am I using here? This is a perfect example of the hero RB strategy. Now, the hero RB strategy states that you're going to get a top tier running back, one of the top 5 running backs, and then you're not really going to draft a running back for a while. So we're going to get Eckler with our 2nd pick, and then we can go with 2 receivers in our next 2 picks. Like I said, I like to make sure that 2 of my top 3 picks are wide receivers, typically, because I want those wide receiver positions to be solid. I want all my points coming from my top 2 wide receivers. So let's say you go with Eckler, then in your second and third round, you're going with guys like T. Higgins and Chris Olave that have a great chance to finish top 15. Then you can get a guy like Joe Burrow in the 4th round to stack him with T. Higgins. And then you get a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs in the 5th round. He is your second running back. That's a nice RB2 right there. And then you can go with a guy like Pat Freiermuth after that if you want a solid tight end. Now, my favorite strategy, and what I hope I have in a lot of my fantasy drafts, is I hope I actually have a later pick in the drafts because I like to target 2 top wide receivers. I like, and my ideal draft is when I get 2 top 10 wide receivers with my first 2 picks. And the only way I can really do that is if I have a later pick in the fantasy football draft. So let's just say, based on sleeper 12-man PPR leagues, I get the 7th pick out of 12 in a draft. Now, you might be thinking, John, well, you're not really going to get a top-tier player. You know, McCaffrey's gone. Kelsey's probably gone at that point. Bijan might be gone. Everybody's hyping him up, but McCaffrey's gone. Chase is gone. Eckler's gone. Justin Jefferson's gone. Who are you going to get? Well, Cooper Kupp, coming off an injury, I think he has high upside. Tyreek Hill is still there, and Tua is still going to play a lot this year. It remains to be seen if he's going to stay healthy, but he's going to target Tyreek Hill a lot. So what if I get Cooper Kupp with my 7th pick, and then in the top of the 2nd round, I get Tyreek Hill? Let's just say that happens. Now, my top 2 receivers are 2 of the top probably 7 or 8 receivers that are going to happen in fantasy football this year. And then I can go ahead and get my number 3 pick, which is Najee Harris. And you might be saying, okay, Tyreek Hill might be already picked, but maybe you can get a guy like Garrett Wilson or A.J. Brown with that 2nd round pick. So you have Cooper Kupp, let's say Garrett Wilson, who's going to be paired with Aaron Rodgers, and then you get Najee Harris. Now I have 2 top tier wide receivers. I have my running back. Maybe in the 4th round, I'm like, okay, I want a really good quarterback. I can go with Justin Fields. You know, with the addition of DJ Moore, I think he's going to open up that offense, be able to run it, and also pass it for some touchdowns this year. Then in the 5th round, you can get a guy like Alexander Mattison, like I mentioned before. Rachaad White, also in that vicinity, a great RB2. I love those guys as RB2s if you're looking for guys to target as RB2s this year. And then maybe in your 6th round, you can get a guy like Darren Waller. A lot of hype around him being the number 1 target in the Giants offense. I like him as a potential option at tight end. So those are some of the strategies that I would use based on where I'm going to pick in my draft. But like any draft, you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to change your strategy as the draft moves on. But the draft is super important, so you guys got to make sure you stay tuned to all my videos throughout this month of August so that you guys can ace your fantasy football draft. And the most important video you might see all season long is actually probably coming out very soon or already came out. Definitely go and check our channel, my Patreon draft guide video, and it is going out on the Patreon. It's my fantasy football draft guide video for 2023, and in that, I'm going to cover everything. It's probably going to be 1 hour long, and I am going to cover everything from do's and don'ts of drafts. I'm going to do a mock draft for you guys. I'm going to tell you guys the players I'm targeting. I'm going to tell you guys the players I'm avoiding, and all my sleepers, breakouts. I'm revealing all my secrets in that draft guide video. So make sure to head over to the Patreon. A link is in the bio. And make sure that you stay tuned to all of our content throughout this season, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on TikTok, and make sure to join those Sunday live shows that I have every Sunday before the NFL games start from 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time to 1 p.m. Eastern Time before the games kick off. I get so many viewers, averaged about 55 to 60,000 viewers every live show last season, which is crazy to me, but I'm super excited to have you guys back for this season, and I can't wait for you guys to win your fantasy leagues.